Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Glad to be back.
You know how this works. You send us the sources and we take a deep dive into them.
That's right. We try to take all those sources and synthesize them into something that's hopefully interesting and informative.
And today's topic,
A real head-scratcher.
it is, we're talking about the Roman Dodecahedron.
One of the most enduring mysteries of the Roman Empire.
You know, I have to admit, when I first saw Roman Dodecahedron in our list of upcoming topics, I had to look it up.
I don't blame you. It's not exactly a household name.
It's not. But the more I read about these things, the more fascinated I became.
They really are quite intriguing.
We've got a great mix of sources for this one. News articles, encyclopedia entries, even some online discussions and theories.
A real grab bag of information.
It is. So before we get too deep into it, can you give us a quick overview? What exactly is a Roman dodecahedron?
So picture this. A small, hollow object.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And it's made of bronze, usually bronze, that is. There's at least one example of one made of silver.
Ooh, fancy.
Right. So this object has 12 flat faces.
Okay, 12 faces. I'm following so far.
And each of those faces is a pentagon, a perfect pentagon.
Getting more interesting.
And in the middle of each of these pentagonal faces, there's a circular hole.
A hole. Interesting.
And to make things even more, well, unique, shall we say, each corner has a little knob on it.
Okay, now I'm really picturing it.
Yeah,
And I have to say, it's a pretty strange-looking object.
that's one way to put it.
It is. But the thing is, the craftsmanship is really quite impressive.
Oh, absolutely. They're very well made.
So that makes me think, why go to all that effort for something that seems so, well, so simple in a way?
Exactly. That's one of the big questions, isn't it? The craftsmanship itself really points to these things having some kind of purpose. And the fact that they used bronze, which would have taken a lot of skill and resources, well, that just reinforces that idea.
Makes sense. So these weren't just some random trinkets, they were...
Intentional. Definitely intentional.
Okay, so let's talk about when and where these dodecahedrons show up.
Mm-hmm.
When were they made and where have they been found?
All right, so we know they date back to the Roman Empire, specifically between the 2nd and 4th centuries AD.
Okay, so right in the heart of the Roman Empire.
Right, but here's the catch. Most of them have been found in the northwestern provinces of the empire, places like what's now France, Germany, and Britain.
Hold on, so not in Rome itself.
Nope, not in Italy at all, which is pretty strange when you think about it.
It is. It almost makes you think these were maybe like a regional thing, specific to those areas.
That's definitely one of the many questions we have about them.
For sure. Now, speaking of Britain, one of the sources you sent mentioned a recent discovery over there. Something about a dodecahedron in really good condition.
Yes, this was a really exciting find. It was unearthed in a village called Norton Disney in Lincolnshire.
And get this, it was amateur archaeologists who found it.
I know, right? Talk about being in the right place at the right time.
It's amazing. Now, finding one of these dodecahedra is already pretty rare, I imagine, but to find one in such good shape after all this time, that's incredible.
It really is. This one is actually larger than many other examples we found.
Oh, wow. Even bigger than usual. So what makes this discovery so special?
Well, besides its size and the fact that it's in such great condition, it was found in situ.
In situ. I'm not familiar with that term.
It means it was found in its original location, undisturbed.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is. It gives archaeologists a much clearer picture of the context in which it was originally placed.
That's got to be a goldmine of information for them.
Absolutely. It's really reignited interest in trying to figure out just what these dodecahedrons were used for.
Okay, so we've got these mysterious objects, meticulously crafted, found across a specific region of the Roman Empire, and with no instructions or labels attached. I'm already hooked, but the big question remains, what were they used for?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The sources you sent are chock full of theories, some more plausible than others.
Well, let's dive into those theories. I'm ready to hear what researchers have come up with, even the ones that are maybe a little out there.
Oh, don't worry. There are plenty of those. We'll start by looking at some of the theories that haven't quite held up under scrutiny.
Sounds good to me. Let's debunk some myths.
Exactly. It'll help us narrow down the possibilities. One of the early theories was that they might have been measuring devices.
Measuring devices. Like for construction or something.
Yeah, that was the thought. You know, maybe for surveying land or measuring distances.
I can see the logic there. They are geometric shapes, after all.
Right. But there are a couple of problems with that theory. For one, the dodecahedra come in all sorts of different sizes.
That's a good point. Wouldn't be very accurate if they weren't standardized.
Exactly. And they also lack any kind of consistent markings that you would expect on a measuring tool.
Yeah, like numbers or increments or something.
Right, so the measuring theory kind of falls apart when you look at the details.
Okay, so not a ruler. What else have researchers considered?
Well, another idea that's been tossed around is that they were used for spool knitting.
Spool knitting. I'm not even sure what that is, honestly.
It's a way of making yarn or cord using a spool with pegs.
And they thought these bronze dodecahedra were used for that.
Yeah, some people thought maybe the knobs on the corners could have been used as pegs.
I guess I can kind of see that, but still seems like a stretch.
It is, and there are a couple of other reasons why this theory doesn't really hold water.
Like what?
First off, spool knitting, as far as we know, didn't come about until much later in history.
So after the Roman period.
Way after. Plus, bronze wouldn't really be a practical material for a knitting tool.
True, it's pretty heavy and not very flexible.
Exactly. So we can probably rule out the knitting theory as well.
Okay, so we've debunked measuring and knitting. What other unlikely explanations are there?
Well, some people have suggested they might have been children's toys.
Toys.
Really?
I know, it seems a bit far-fetched.
Especially considering the bronze and the craftsmanship seems a bit elaborate for a kid's toy. Yeah, that's one of the issues with that theory. Plus, we haven't found any evidence to suggest that Roman children played with anything like this.
Right. Any other theories we can quickly dismiss?
Oh, there's one more. Some people have even proposed that they might have been weapons.
Weapons, come on, those little things.
I know. It sounds crazy.
They look way too fragile to be used as weapons.
Right. They're small, they're hollow, and they would probably break pretty easily if you tried to hit something with them.
Yeah, I don't think they would be very effective in battle.
Not at all. So I think it's safe to say that the weapon theory is not very likely either.
All right, so we've ruled out measuring, knitting, toys, and weapons. I'm ready for the good stuff now. What are some of the more compelling theories?
Well, there are two main theories that have really intrigued researchers, and they're both quite interesting.
Lay on me.
The first theory is that the dodecahedra were used for religious or ritualistic purposes.
Ooh, that sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
Well, remember how we talked about some of them being found in coin hoards?
Yeah, that stood out to me. What do you think that tells us?
It suggests that they were considered valuable, possibly connected to wealth or even the afterlife.
Interesting. So maybe they were used in some kind of burial ritual.
That's a possibility. And the fact that they're mainly found in Gallo-Roman regions hints at a connection to specific local beliefs or practices.
Right, so maybe they were used in some sort of regional religious ceremonies.
Exactly. Some scholars even believe they could have been used in rituals related to magic or divination.
Magic and divination, huh? Sounds like something straight out of a Harry Potter book.
A little bit. But those practices were a real part of life in ancient Rome, especially in the provinces.
It makes sense. So maybe these dodecahedras were like tools for connecting with the supernatural.
Possibly. And it's worth noting that magic and divination eventually became taboo with the rise of Christianity.
Ah, so maybe that's why we don't have any written records about them. The knowledge was lost or suppressed over time.
That's one possibility. It's like a missing piece of the puzzle.
I love it. Okay, so that's the religious theory. What about the other one you mentioned?
The other main theory is that the dodecahedra were used as astronomical devices.
Astronomical, you mean like for looking at the stars?
Exactly. There are a few reasons why researchers think this might be the case.
I'm all ears.
First off, the 12 faces of the dodecahedron could correspond to the 12 constellations of the zodiac.
Ooh, that's a pretty strong connection.
Right. And to make it even more compelling, some dodecahedra have actually been found with zodiac symbols engraved on them.
Wow. No way. That's pretty convincing evidence.
It is. And if you think about it, the Romans were very interested in astronomy. They used it for navigation, agriculture, and even religious purposes.
So it wouldn't be too surprising if they had tools like these for observing the stars.
Exactly. They could have been used for sighting, for tracking the movements of constellations, or even for making calculations related to the calendar.
Like a really ancient star chart.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Now, one of the sources you sent mentioned a really interesting take on the astronomical theory.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. It was the architectural historian, Dr. Jonathan Foyle, right?
That's right. He's done a lot of research on Roman architecture and technology.
And what makes his theory so interesting?
Well, he believes that the dodecahedra were actually created by Celtic craftspeople working under the influence of Roman culture.
So not just a Roman invention, but a blend of cultures.
Exactly. He thinks that it represents a fusion of Celtic craftsmanship and Roman ideas. which I think adds a whole other layer of complexity to this mystery.
I love it. It's like a cultural mashup from ancient times.
It is. And it reminds us that the Roman Empire was a diverse place with lots of different cultural influences at play.
Right, it wasn't just togas and gladiators. Okay, so we've got the religious theory, the astronomical theory, and now this idea of a cultural blend. It's fascinating stuff. But the question remains, what was the real purpose of these things?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the truth is, we might never know for sure.
Oh, man. I was hoping you had a definitive answer up your sleeve.
I wish I did. But the beauty of history is that sometimes the mystery endures.
True, true. It's like having a 1,700-year-old puzzle with some pieces missing.
Exactly. And it's up to us to try to put those pieces together using the evidence we have.
And who knows, maybe someday a new discovery will shed more light on this mystery.
I hope so. But in the meantime, I think it's important to involve our listeners in this discussion.
Yes. We've presented the theories, we've looked at the evidence, now it's your turn to weigh in. You know, it's kind of mind-blowing to think about these little objects just sitting in the ground for centuries. Like they've witnessed so much history.
It is pretty incredible, isn't it? Centuries of empires rising and falling, wars, plagues, all while these dodecahedra were just waiting to be rediscovered.
And now here we are in the 21st century trying to figure out what they were used for.
And still coming up short. It really shows you how much we still don't know about the past.
It really does. Okay, before we wrap up, let's do a quick recap of what we've learned about these mysterious Roman dodecahedra.
Sounds good. So we started by talking about what they look like, right? 12 sides, each one a pentagon with holes and knobs. Not your average everyday object.
Definitely not something you see at the grocery store.
Yeah.
And we know they were made during the Roman Empire, but interestingly, not found in Rome itself.
Right, primarily in the northwestern provinces, which of course raises all sorts of questions about their purpose and who was using them.
And then we went through a whole bunch of theories trying to figure out what they were used for.
We had some fun debunking the less likely ideas like measuring tools or knitting spools.
Those were definitely out there.
Yeah, but it's all part of the process, right? And then we got to the more compelling theories, the religious or ritualistic use, maybe tied to local beliefs and practices.
Yeah, of course, the astronomical theory, the idea that they were used for observing the stars or maybe even calculating calendars. Plus, that really cool idea from Dr. Foyle about a Celtic-Roman cultural blend.
Yeah, that one's a favorite of mine. Really highlights the diversity and complexity of the Roman world.
It does. You know, it's kind of funny. We started this deep dive with a mystery, and we're ending it with even more mysteries.
That's the beauty of history. It's not always about finding all the answers. It's about the journey of exploration, of piecing together the clues and using our imaginations to fill in the gaps.
Well said. And I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Agreed.
So, to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to keep pondering this mystery of the Roman dodecahedron. Maybe you'll come up with your own theory, who knows?
And if you do, be sure to let us know. We love hearing from our listeners.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep learning.